On November 18, 1978, in the heart of the Guyanese jungle, a discovery was made that would haunt humanity forever. When American soldiers and Guyanese police entered a remote settlement called Jonestown, they expected resistance. They expected armed cultists. What they found instead was silence. A silence so heavy, it felt unnatural. And then, as they walked deeper inside, they saw it. Over 900 lifeless bodies sprawled across the dirt, lying face down, arms wrapped around children, cups scattered on the ground. A massacre so unimaginable that soldiers who witnessed it later said they could never sleep the same way again. This was the Jonestown Massacre, a so-called utopia turned into one of the darkest tragedies in modern history. To understand this horror, we must start with the man behind it, Jim Jones. He began as a preacher in the United States. To his followers, he wasn't just a man, he was a savior, a prophet who promised racial equality, community, and a better life. But beneath that charisma was something far more sinister. Jim Jones was obsessed with power and control. He preached socialism, he praised the Soviet Union, and he convinced thousands that America's government was their enemy. By the 1970s, media outlets and politicians were exposing him as a fraud, accusing him of abuse and manipulation. So Jim Jones made a bold move. He told his followers they would escape America's corruption by moving to a hidden paradise in the jungles of Guyana. And so in 1974, over 1,000 loyal believers followed him into the dense rainforest. They built a settlement from scratch. Jim called it Jonestown. To outsiders, it looked like heaven. Fresh fruits, vegetables, schools, children playing in the sun. Even videos were sent back to America showing smiling faces, happy workers, and Jim himself boasting about their success.
These are potato chips made from plantain, and they're more delicious. They're a combination of a potato chip and a French fry and radishes. You don't know what you're missing down here. They make their own mun hamburgers and the leafy green vegetables. By the way, we just won first prize from the national government of Guyana for leafy green vegetables. Here are the people at the table eating an afternoon snack. You see, Pepsi Cola is here for 3 cents, American money. That sounds appetizing, doesn't it? I can't get anybody to go home with me there.
But those videos were nothing but propaganda. Inside Jonestown, it was a prison. Life there was grueling. Followers worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week in the scorching jungle heat. They were constantly monitored, surrounded by guards with guns. Food was scarce, medical care was minimal. Letters were censored, escape was impossible. Jim controlled everything, from the loudspeakers that blasted his voice 24 hours a day, to the propaganda session where people were forced to listen to his ramblings. And worse, he held terrifying suicide rehearsals. He would gather everyone, hand them a cup, and tell them to drink. Moments later, he'd reveal it wasn't poison. This time, it was just a test, a loyalty test. Imagine the fear. Imagine not knowing if this sip would be your last. Over time, people were broken, exhausted, terrified, trapped. Back in America, families of Jonestown members were desperate. They begged the government for help. And in November of 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan agreed to go see Jonestown himself. He arrived with journalists, cameramen, and relatives of cult members. At first, everything looked perfect. Jim put on a show. Children danced, people sang, food was served. But behind the smiles, there was fear in people's eyes. That night during a party, 2 brave members slipped a secret note into the congressman's hand. It read, "Please help us get out of Jonestown." That note changed everything. Soon, more and more followers came forward, whispering their desperate pleas to escape. Even some of Jim's closest allies begged to leave. Jim Jones knew then. His perfect illusion was collapsing. On November 18th, Congressman Ryan and his group gathered with the defectors who wanted out. They boarded trucks to a small airstrip called Port Kaituma. Relief was in sight, but Jim wasn't about to let them leave alive. As the delegation prepared to board their planes, a truck suddenly roared up. Inside were armed men, Jones's personal hit squad, and then chaos. Gunfire ripped through the air. People screamed. Bullets tore through the journalists, the defectors, and the congressman himself. Leo Ryan was shot more than 20 times, dying instantly. Journalists were gunned down beside him. Survivors dove under the planes, running into the tall grass for cover. It was a bloodbath. And as the jungle echoed with gunfire, back at Jonestown, Jim Jones gathered his people for the final act. He sat them down at the central pavilion, and he told them the time had come. Jones's voice was calm, almost soothing, as he explained, "We can't go back. The government will come for us. The only way out is to die together."
They're going to shoot that pilot, and down comes that plane into the jungle. And we had better not have any of our children left when it's over, because they'll parachute in here on us. So my opinion is that we be kind to children and be kind to seniors and take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back. They won't leave us alone. They're now going back to tell more lies, which means more congressmen, and there's no way we can survive.
Huge vats of grape-flavored drink mixed with cyanide, Valium, and sedatives were prepared. Mothers lined up with their children. Babies were injected with poison first. Their cries filled the pavilion. Some adults drank willingly, their minds broken by years of manipulation. Others resisted, but armed guards stood by, ready to force the cup to their lips or shoot them if they refused. One by one, hundreds collapsed, foaming at the mouth, writhing in pain. Parents held their children as they convulsed in their arms. Survivors later recalled the horrific screams that echoed across Jonestown as death spread like a wave. Jim Jones himself never drank the poison. When the end came, he put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. When Guyanese police and American soldiers finally reached Jonestown, the sight shattered them. Over 900 bodies lay in neat rows, stacked on top of each other. More than 300 of them were children. Soldiers said the smell of death hit them long before they saw it. The silence was suffocating. It was the largest single deliberate loss of American civilian life in history until 9/11. And it all happened because one man twisted faith, hope, and loyalty into a nightmare. Jonestown was meant to be a paradise, but it became a graveyard, a chilling reminder of how far people will go when blinded by devotion, and how one man's madness can lead hundreds to hell.